The buzz that I was exposed to ever since this film was released was not the most charitable. It seemed many were disturbed by its shock value and lost in its spontaneity. Despite the online scrutiny, I decided to give the film a fair shake and approach it with an open mind. And sadly, I should have listened to the initial warnings. To be fair, some of the feedback that this film received was a bit on the hyperbolic side, as I felt it wasn't a total disaster. The first 30 minutes of building tension between Felix and Oliver was great, and overall the film has a spontaneous energy that is very unpredictable. It's not until we enter the Saltburn estate where the tone of the film changes into a fever dream where Oliver becomes this sexual deviant whose repressed desires for Felix slowly reveal his calculated nature. His shy ruse was manufactured to eventually take over the estate and frame each family member's death as an accident. Although it was edited in such a way to avoid seeing Oliver's master plan, the decision to suddenly change his character into a calculated monster felt more like a cheap gimmick than an effective narrative strategy. It's like those films where a character experiences a series of bizarre events only then to be suddenly woken up from a dream. There's nothing wrong with this device in itself, but it avoids the nuance of developing a complex emotional profile and produces a character that feels disconnected from the conflicts that preceded it. It feels so forced that instead, I see the decision as a clever attempt at subversion. Not to mention, Oliver's creepiness alludes to the character twist that the film was banking on the whole time, which dampens the effect it ultimately had on the audience. The biggest drawback, as someone who wants to feel lost in a film, is that this decision made the writing call attention to itself and made any sympathy that we had towards him instantly vanish. What was Emerald Fennell trying to say with this story? I know there was an indictment of the aloof, wealthy class, but having Oliver come out as a sociopath ultimately diminishes the role of the antagonist given to the Saltburn family. Are we supposed to take away that the most effective way to clown the elites is to act meek in front of them and then stab him in the back later? Even the depiction of the family, sans Felix, just came off a bit too obvious. Rosamund Pike's character represents the idea of a snobbish mother as opposed to someone who's just naturally vicious. It was just all very one note, and I wish the film gave more of an understanding of the nature of her pettiness. There's also this tension introduced earlier in the film where Oliver feels isolated and fears being tossed aside by Felix like many of his past friends. Because this is alluded to several times, I was quite disappointed when Felix abruptly dies and all of this emotional buildup just suddenly disappears. It was never clearly stated to me what exactly attracted Felix to Oliver in the first place, but that might just be a case of me not connecting the dots. I found it odd that the birthday party was still thrown for Oliver after it was revealed that his parents were very much still alive. That was the sole reason for Felix to empathize with Oliver and establish some level of trust, enough to invite him to Saltburn in the first place. There are quite a few logical inconsistencies sprinkled throughout this film, but Ayo Adebri put it best in her Letterboxd review that I'll show right here. Instead of exploring what it means to have privilege and how it destroys the dynamic of this family, the film goes off in an abstract direction that feels more tethered to the TikTok algorithm and less of an artistic statement. The film tried hard to be edgy with the operative word tried, but came off as an insubstantial revenge fantasy where we feel less than nothing for the person carrying out the revenge.